Hey, good morning everybody. We're going to start our OSHA training this morning. We're here at the shop at Quincy High School. Mr. Hannaford and I are going to present the final units for the Focus 4 group. Mr. Hannaford's going to be doing electrical, and I'm going to be finishing up the caught in and struck by. All right, here we go. So, the reason OSHA, the intent of OSHA again is to protect workers, and OSHA started in 1970. At that time there were nearly 15,000 deaths a year in the industries, and the government stepped forward to create OSHA to protect the workers, and that number is down to 5,000 a year, which is still a lot, and they're constantly working on it. Young workers are more likely to be killed or injured on a job site than any other group of workers, and that is because of the following reasons: lack of training, lack of confidence to bring up a safety issue with their boss, and also just the fact that when you're young you feel like you can do anything. You feel like you're indestructible, and you end up putting yourself in bad situations. So the intent of this program that we're doing here at the school is to make you aware of that, so that when you go out into the field you will know that you deserve to be trained, and you have the right to be trained, and that is something that you know should be given to you before you do any task on a job site. All right, so OSHA has standards, and this is the Act of Law, 1970. President Nixon was the president at the time, the 37th president at the time. And again, the mission is to ensure a safe and healthful work conditions for working men and women, and by setting and enforcing standards to provide training. So we should all know what a standard is, being that it's the written law and a guide. And your rights are: you have the right to that safe, healthful workplace. You have the right to know about hazardous chemicals. You have the right to report an injury to your employer. You have the right to complain or request for a hazard to be corrected by your employer. Hazard exposure and medical records should be made available to you if you wish. You have the right to file a complaint with OSHA. You have the right to participate in an OSHA inspection. And you have the right to be free from retaliation for exercising those safety rights. The right to know poster should be posted on any job site where employers can see that. It's the law, and it's a reminder to you as an employee what your rights are, and you should be able to look at that any day on the job site. Just a quick reminder of what the Focus 4 group is. Falls, which is the #1 cause of injury and death in the construction industry. Struck by, so that's struck by vehicles, struck by equipment, struck by falling objects. Caught between, that would be caught between vehicles and equipment, caught between construction materials, and then electrocution. So just a reminder, the best way to prevent an injury on a job site is to plan ahead. Plan your job, assess the hazards on the job, try to engineer them out before you even get started, and then use the right equipment to protect yourself, and then you should be trained before you start work. Those are the 3 key elements to protecting yourself on the job site. And again, falls are the #1 safety in construction, and we need to have fall protection in construction if we're over 6 feet. All right, so now we're going to wrap up the 3rd unit of our Focus 4 group, which is the caught-in. So the objective of this training, if you remember, is to teach students and workers how to identify caught-in hazards on the job site or workplace. You should be able to describe what the types of caught-in and caught-by hazards are. You should be able to protect yourself from those hazards. You should be able to know how to protect yourself. And you should recognize what your employer's requirements are to protect you as a worker. And you should always remember, of all of those safety issues, safety starts with you. You are your best ally to protect yourself on a job site. Safety should be your responsibility. In other words, the boss can give you all the information, give you all the training, but you're responsible for using it properly, working properly, and keeping an eye on yourself on the job site. If you remember, all of our standards in OSHA, it's Title 29, CFR, which means Code of Federal Regulations, and it's in part number 1926, and then all of the standards that relate to construction are in subparts. So you can go to OSHA.gov, look that up, and you can find all your standards that you need to be working with. And the definition of caught between or caught in by hazard, it's defined as an injury that results from a person being squeezed, caught, crushed, pinched, compressed between two or more objects or between parts of certain objects. And according to OSHA, caught in and caught hazards are defined as those injuries being a list of catastrophic injuries, and then there are minor injuries, and it's broken down that way. And one of the students asked the question, would we ever be in a trench? And the answer is yes, that you're most likely to be in a trench compared to, say,
Carpenter or
a carpenter. Yeah, exactly. I mean, carpenters are in excavated areas where we're doing foundations, but typically we have plenty of room. We're inside of a hole that is banked and protected, and we're putting the foundation in. But plumbers and electricians are running lines across the job site, so they're in these trenches. So to wrap up the Focus 4 group, unit number 3, caught in, I'm just going to go over these questions. So the questions that you should be thinking about right now: do you know what a caught-in accident is under the definition of OSHA's Code of Federal Regulations 1926? Do you know how to identify a common hazard being a caught-in or caught-between hazard? Do you know the types of caught-in hazards? Do you know how to protect yourself? Do you know how to recognize your employer's requirements to provide you with protection from a caught-in? And do you know how to find the information about job site work safety? And finally, do you understand that it is your ultimate responsibility to protect yourself on a job site? So the 3 hazards are: you can be struck by vehicles, caught between vehicles and equipment, caught between two other points on a job site, being the ground and something else, or caught between equipment, caught in gears of material, so unguarded equipment. You could get your hand caught in there, you could get your fingers caught in there. Any moving operation, any type of moving mechanical machine has to be guarded. You should never take the guards off, if you remember that in our last meeting. All of our equipment comes with guards. It's a federal regulation that they do. So to manufacture them, they have to pass OSHA standards or ANSI standards, and to do that, all moving parts have to have a guard. And it's against OSHA regulations to take a guard off to make something easier to do the job. And that's where people get hurt. Removing guards and altering the equipment to make it seem more convenient for them, but it opens up the risk of a hazard.
Alright guys, so we're going to talk about electrical, right? With electrical, we're going to talk a little bit about power tools. Alright? It's really important, right, when you're dealing with electricity, right? Always assume everything is live, right? Whenever you're dealing with extension cords, you don't want your extension cord to be all twisted and knotted, right? Splices and wires exposed, right? These are all safety hazards. You cannot use cords like this. If OSHA was to come onto a job and find cords like this, they would instantly go over and snip the heads off and make you throw them away, right? You also want to check the ends, the ground prong. If that's removed, that cord is no good, right? Again, OSHA finds a cord in this condition, right? Not only could it be a fine, right, but they're going to make you throw it away, right? Here's a better wrapped cord, right? It's in decent shape, but see the 2 pieces of electrical tape, which are most likely covering splits? No good, right? Even if you were to cover those with electrical tape, they're still no good. Electrocution is a really dangerous thing to have happen on a job site. It can freeze up your muscles. It can cause organ failure, right? Depending on the amount of voltage and what you're being hit with. Lockout, tagout. Whenever you're working on a piece of equipment, whether it be a rooftop unit, a saw in the shop, right? If you're going to get into the electrical connections of any type of unit like that, you want to make sure you lock out, tag out, right? Turn that knife switch off. There's normally a spot to put a hole through. There's all types of different things for lockout, tag out. There are things that go over that connector. There's normally a little hole that you can put a lock through, right? Make sure you do that. You don't want to be in a piece of equipment. If you cannot turn off the machine itself, you can go to the panel, all right? Turn that breaker off, shut that panel, and lock that panel. That counts as lockout, tag out as well. So you click the main or the breaker that you want, close the panel, and lock it, right? Make sure and then tag it as locked out, right? So that the people know that you're working on a piece of equipment that has to do in here. Whenever you turn that breaker back on, right, you always want to make sure that you look away and keep your face away from the panel as you turn that back on. If there was ever a flash or an arc, right, you want to make sure you're protecting your face and eyes. PPE, safety glasses, face shields, all those things should still be considered whenever doing anything like that. I got a couple different tools here. I got a Sawzall, a hammer drill, an old hole shooter, Milwaukee, and a circular saw. Every single one of these has a power cord, right? You'd want to check for any frays or breaks all the way from the housing all the way to the end. Check the end. Is the ground prong gone? And this one is, right? You could not use this tool. Every tool should be inspected before you use it. Check for guards. Make sure everything's working. Check the cord. Check the ground. See how there's only 2 prongs on that? Right? That's a double insulated tool, which means every electrical part of this tool is covered with plastic so that it cannot transfer electricity from the tool to the operator. This tool, with its metal housing and its gone prong, will transfer electricity. That motor goes bad, energizes the case, you'll be electrocuted. With dealing with different voltages, right, you'll need different PPE, right? Typically, every day you need, right, you need long pants, boots, glasses, right? But as the voltage goes up, you need to better protect yourself. Rubber boots, rubber gloves, different coverage. So personal protective equipment is key with every situation, right? You can never be wearing too much. Ear protection, eye protection, face shields, proper clothing, long sleeves, gloves, boots, pants. PPE is huge. Depending on your body makeup, you will be affected by electricity different, right? The way electricity works, right, is that the electricity passes through the conductor. The conductor has a very high amount of conductivity, so it allows it to pass through, right? Now, electricity wants to find its fastest way to ground, right? So if you touch a wire that's insulated, right, it's just going to continue to go by because it doesn't want to work to get through. If you touch a bare wire, now the electricity finds its way. All of a sudden, it's like, hey, I can find a quicker way to ground from your hand to your foot, right? Now you're going to complete that circuit and get electrocuted. Electricity wants to find its way to ground as fast as possible. Water will travel down the pipe, right, where the way it feels it can go. Electricity is wants to find to the ground as fast as it can, so it's going to take that quickest route, which could potentially be through you.